If you are hearing my voice tonight, take a moment to let the day begin to fade. Let the noise of the world grow distant. Let your thoughts slow down until they begin to move like gentle waves. There is something I want you to imagine. Somewhere, deep beneath layers of dust and time, there lies a letter. It was written by hand nearly 2,000 years ago, a letter that was never meant to be found. Its ink has faded, its corners worn away, yet its words remain. They belong to a Roman soldier writing on the night before his final battle. No one knows his name. No one knows if he ever made it home. But his words survived, carried forward by chance, by earth, and by the quiet patience of history. And tonight, they have found their way to you. Before we begin, I want you to prepare your space. If there is light around you, let it soften. Turn off what you do not need. Let the glow of your screen be the only thing that remains, and soon, even that will fade behind your closed eyes. Take a slow breath in, hold it for just a moment, and now, let it go. Again, in and out. Feel the rhythm of your breathing begin to calm the spaces within you. Feel the weight of your body resting where you are. The ground holds you. The air moves gently around you. You are safe here. You are home for the night. Before we travel back in time together, I would love to know where you are listening from. You can share it in the comments below, whether you are in a small town, a busy city, or somewhere in between. Your voice becomes part of this quiet circle we build every night. And if you wish to join this place again, you can subscribe and return whenever the world feels too loud. Now, close your eyes. Picture a flickering candle. See the faint glow touching a piece of parchment, rough, ancient, and covered in faded script. You can almost hear the scratching of a quill, the slow breath of someone writing in the stillness of night. This letter has waited a very long time to be read. Let us open it together. And listen to what a Roman soldier wished to say before the last battle. The story begins in silence. The kind of silence that only exists in places where time itself seems to have stopped. It was a late afternoon when I found it, or perhaps it found me. The sun was low, slanting through the cracks of an old Roman outpost buried beneath layers of earth and memory. Dust floated through golden light like slow-moving stars. Each step I took echoed softly against the ancient stones. A whisper of footsteps, long gone. I had been studying these ruins for weeks, the remnants of walls, the faint outline of what might once have been a barracks, and pieces of pottery too small to tell their story. It was quiet work, patient work, and though I often wondered what lives had passed here, I never expected to meet one so directly. In the corner of a small chamber, half hidden beneath a fallen stone, I saw something pressed against the ground, thin, brittle, and impossibly delicate. It was a fragment of parchment. At first, I thought it was nothing more than the remains of some forgotten record. But when I lifted it gently into the light, I saw that the ink still lived upon it, faint, yet still breathing its message through centuries. The edges were torn, the surface cracked, but the handwriting was clear. Roman script, careful and practiced, with the uneven flow of something written by candlelight. It felt alive, as if the person who wrote it had only just set down their quill. I remember holding my breath. My fingers trembled slightly as I brushed away the dust. A small wax seal, barely visible, still clung to the corner. No official emblem, no military mark, only the faint impression of a ring, perhaps the soldier's own. I carried it outside, where the air was warmer and the light softer. For a long time, I just looked at it, afraid that even a breath might cause it to vanish. Then, slowly, I began to read. The first line was written with care, as though each word mattered deeply. To whoever may one day find this, know that I wrote these words as the night settled before my last dawn. There was no name, no rank, no date, only the voice of a man suspended in time, a soldier who had chosen to write instead of sleep. As I read on, the world around me began to fade. The ruins dissolved into shadow. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of smoke and iron. And then I was no longer standing among stones and dust. I was there beside him. He sat by a dim fire, his armor resting against a wooden post, his helmet beside it. The flames danced in his eyes as he wrote, pausing now and then to listen to the quiet hum of the camp, the faint crackle of fire, the distant murmur of men speaking softly in Latin, the rhythmic steps of a guard on night patrol. I could feel his solitude, not loneliness, but a calm acceptance of it. He was not writing for glory, nor confession, nor history. He was writing to remember, to keep something human alive before morning came. His words flowed like slow water. We have marched far. I do not know what tomorrow brings. The sky tonight is still. I think often of home, of faces I may never see again. But there is peace in the knowing that all things end and perhaps begin again. There was a humility in his tone that caught me, a gentleness that defied the image of the soldier I had studied in books and lectures. This was not a man of conquest, but of reflection, a man aware of the brevity of his own existence. I turned another fragment and saw a faint line near the bottom. If these words survive me, let them carry only kindness. Let whoever reads them remember that I was once here, as real as breath. For a long time I did not move. The wind had shifted, carrying the scent of dry grass and stone. The sun had dipped lower, and the shadows of the ruins stretched long and thin, reaching across the field like old memories. In that moment, I realized something simple yet profound. We never truly find the past. It finds us when we are quiet enough to listen. And as the wind moved softly through the broken columns, it was as if the soldier himself had begun to speak again, not through the parchment, but through the space between heartbeats. The historian within me began to fade. The listener within me remained. I closed my eyes. The warmth of the Roman fire replaced the chill of the present. The night around him deepened, and his voice, calm, human, and filled with quiet strength, began to tell his story. The fire burns low tonight. It is a small, flickering thing, fighting against the cool breath of the wind that moves through the camp. Beyond its circle of light, shadows stretch long and silent across the earth. The men are quiet now. Some sleep wrapped in rough blankets. Some murmur soft prayers to distant gods. Others sit alone, their faces turned toward the stars, wondering if those same stars shine above their homes. I sit with my parchment balanced across my knees. The ink dries quickly in the chill air. The wax candle beside me flickers and bends, its flame shaped by every passing breeze. The sound of the camp feels almost alive, the slow movement of armor, the restless snort of horses, the the low voice of a centurion speaking to his men. All of it blends together into a rhythm I have known for years. I have marched across rivers and deserts, through forests that whispered in tongues I did not know. I have seen the edge of the empire, where the horizon feels like an ending. Yet tonight feels different. There is something about the air, about the stillness that hangs between heartbeats. Perhaps it is knowing that tomorrow may never come. Perhaps it is simply the peace that finds a man when he has stopped running from himself. I write these words by the dim light of this small fire. It feels like a friend now. This fire, quiet and steady, asking nothing from me. Every so often I lift my eyes and watch the sparks rise, bright for a heartbeat before they vanish into the dark. I wonder if our lives are much the same. There is someone I wish could see this night as I do, someone far away across the sea. If she could look upon this sky, I believe she would see the same moon, pale and full, resting in the clouds like a shield of silver. When I close my eyes, I can almost hear her voice, soft and sure, telling me that all storms must pass, that all wars end. I remember the warmth of her hand the day I left. She had placed a small charm in my palm, a thread of woven cloth, nothing grand, nothing costly. But she said it would bring me safely home. It has stayed with me ever since, tied around my wrist, faded and frayed from rain and dust. I touch it now as I write. It feels like a heartbeat against my skin. The wind shifts. Somewhere behind me, a soldier coughs, then settles again into silence. A dog moves between the tents, its steps soft on the dirt. I can hear the faint creak of leather, the slow breathing of men who dream of home. So many faces, so many stories, each one carrying its own letter that will never be written. When I was younger, I believed courage meant never feeling fear. But now I know it is something quieter. Courage is the act of standing when your heart trembles. It is looking toward dawn, even when you wish to hide in the night. It is the promise you make to yourself that you will not turn away tomorrow. When the horns sound, I will lift my shield and take my place among the ranks. But tonight, I am only a man with ink-stained fingers and a tired soul. I write not to be remembered, but to remember myself. The candle is growing shorter. Its light wavers and bends across the page. Each flicker feels like a breath, steady, fragile, human. I pause between sentences to listen. Even the earth seems to be holding still. There is something sacred about this hour before dawn. The stars begin to fade, but the sky has not yet turned. It is a place between worlds, between what was and what is to come. I think that is where peace lives, not in victory, but in the quiet acceptance of all that has been. If these words ever find another's eyes, I hope they understand that we were not only soldiers, we were sons, we were lovers, we were men who dreamed of laughter, of bread fresh from the oven, of the sound of waves striking the shore. We were men who feared and hoped in equal measure. The fire sighs and lowers. The wax melts into a small pool beside my hand. Soon I will sleep, or try to. But before I close my eyes, I look once more at the stars. They seem closer tonight, as if the sky itself leans down to listen. If tomorrow brings an ending, then let it be gentle. Let it come like the tide, quiet, sure, without cruelty. And if the gods still watch us, I hope they see that we did not go unwillingly, nor without love. I fold my parchment carefully, letting the ink dry in the night air. My hands are steady now. I feel neither dread nor sorrow, only a strange calmness. Like the deep breath before dawn, the camp settles into silence again. Only the faint crackle of embers remains. I lie back on the hard earth, feeling its cool weight beneath me. Above, the stars begin to blur. Sleep comes slowly, gently, carrying me into a dream where no swords shine and no battle waits beyond the sunrise. Sleep comes in waves, though the soldier does not know if it is sleep at all. It feels more like drifting, not away from the camp, but inward, into a place untouched by battle or duty. The fire has died, and only the faintest glow remains. But within the darkness, his thoughts bloom like embers still alive beneath the ashdot. He thinks of home, not the great marble city of Rome that others speak of with pride, but a small village nestled among rolling hills, where wheat fields swayed like gold beneath the summer sun. He remembers waking to the sound of roosters, the creak of wooden shutters, and the soft murmur of his mother's voice as she stirred the morning fire. The smell of bread, still warm, crust crackling in the oven, drifts through his memory so clearly that he can almost taste it. He sees his father in the courtyard, repairing a broken fence, humming under his breath the same tune he always hummed when he worked. A slow, steady rhythm that matched the turning of the earth. As a boy, he would follow close behind, handing him nails, pretending to understand the weight of the hammer, the patience of his hands. His father would smile, but say nothing, only nod toward the fields, and tell him, "All things worth keeping grow slowly." How strange, he thinks, that such small words can remain longer than whole years of a man's life. He has carried them farther than he ever thought he would, across rivers, through forests, over the dust of foreign lands. And still they whisper back to him tonight, soft and certain. He remembers the afternoons when the sun was high and the air shimmered with warmth. He and his brother would race through the fields, their sandals kicking up dirt, their laughter carrying across the open plain. The grass would brush against their legs, and the cicadas would sing until the hills themselves seemed alive with sound. At the time, he never thought to notice the beauty of it. He only wanted to run faster. He only wanted the day to never end. The memory shifts, gentle, like a curtain moving with the breeze. He sees the old well at the edge of the village, the one where the water was always cold, even in the height of summer. He sees his mother there, filling clay jars, her hair catching the sunlight. She would wave to him, and the gold bangles on her wrist would glint like fire. He remembers how her laughter made even the dullest day feel new again. There was peace in those moments, a peace so ordinary that he never recognized it as a gift. The quiet rhythm of life, the turning of seasons, the certainty that tomorrow would always come. Now, in the stillness of a foreign night, he realizes how rare such peace truly is. He writes again, his words slow and deliberate. There is a place I still see when I close my eyes. It is small, unremarkable to anyone but me. Yet it holds everything I once was, and everything I have ever longed to return to. His quill hesitates. He looks up. The moon hangs low now, silver light pooling over the camp like water. Somewhere an owl calls. and the faint rustle of trees answers in kind. He thinks of the festivals in his village, the bright ribbons hung from wooden poles, the scent of roasted grain, the sound of flutes rising into the evening sky. He had danced once, awkward and shy, while others clapped and laughed. He had looked for her, the girl who lived beside the river, but she was not there that night. Still, he remembered how her laughter sounded, how her eyes had caught his one afternoon as they drew water from the stream. He wonders where she is now. He wonders if she is married, if she still tends the same garden that bloomed behind her father's house. So many lives, he thinks, continue quietly, untouched by the battles that shake the earth. And perhaps that is how it should be. Perhaps peace belongs to those who never go looking for it. He leans back, letting his eyes rest. In the darkness behind his eyelids, his home comes alive again. He sees the rows of olive trees, their silver leaves whispering in the wind. He hears the laughter of children chasing each other through narrow stone streets. He feels the heat of the sun on his shoulders, the rough bark of the fig tree beneath his hands. Every sound, every color, every breath of that place feels close enough to touch. If he could, he would walk there one last time. He would stand in the fields as the wind moved through the wheat and listen to the world breathe. He would tell his younger self to remember it all, the scent of the soil, the hum of bees, the warmth of a simple meal shared under fading light. He would say, "One day, these will be the things that save you." His eyes open slowly. The fire beside him has burned to ash, its last glow fading into the dark. The camp remains still. Yet within him, something feels lighter, as if those distant hills have followed him across time. Settling softly within his chest, he knows now that no empire can claim the heart of a man who remembers where he came from. The world may demand loyalty, battle, and blood, but memory is its own kind of freedom. He lowers his head, whispers a quiet thank you to the darkness, and lets the image of home fade gently. Like smoke rising into the stars, the candlelight wavers again, and the soldier's pen moves slowly across the page. His thoughts drift from the stillness of home to the endless motion that has defined most of his life, the march. He writes of roads that stretched beyond sight, unrolling like ribbons of dust and stone beneath the feet of thousands. He remembers the sound first, the rhythm of boots striking the ground in perfect unison, like a heartbeat that belonged not to one man, but to an army. At dawn, it began with the low call of the horns. Men rose, tightened their sandals, lifted their packs, and began to walk. The world moved past them in slow procession, valleys, rivers, forests, all changing, yet somehow the same. He recalls the early mornings when the fog hung low and the air smelled of dew and iron. He would look ahead and see nothing but figures in armor disappearing into mist. The sound of breathing, the clink of shields, the soft mutter of tired voices, and somewhere among them, the faint jingle of a horse's reins as an officer passed by. They would walk until the sun climbed high, and the heat pressed down like a weight upon their backs. The dust would rise, clinging to their faces and lips, until every man looked carved from the same earth. They spoke little then. Words felt heavy under the endless sky. He remembers one man, Gaius tall, with a laugh that could cut through even the worst day. They met in Gaul, when the army crossed a river swollen with rain. Gaius had slipped, nearly swept away, but the soldier caught his arm and pulled him back. After that, they marched side by side. No oath was spoken, yet something unbreakable grew between them, a trust formed not in words, but in the simple act of survival. Sometimes, when the nights stretched long and the stars shone cold, they would speak quietly beside the fire. They spoke of their homes, of mothers and brothers, of the way bread smelled when it came fresh from the oven. Each story was a thread that tied them to something human, something far from the clang of weapons. He remembers the long road through the desert, how the sand stung their faces and filled their armor with heat. They learned to drink sparingly, to move without complaint, to find shade in the shadow of their shields. When the wind rose, they marched with heads bowed, their voices lost beneath the roar of the storm. And yet they did not stop. There were times of beauty, to moments that lived quietly among the hardships. He recalls walking through the mountains of the north, where snow fell in silence and the world seemed carved from glass. He remembers the sight of the sea at dawn, stretching infinite and blue, and how for a moment the entire column stopped to watch the light dance across the waves. It was rare, he writes, for men of war to be still, yet even soldiers know when to listen to wonder. He turns his head slightly, hearing the echo of a voice that no longer exists. Gaius laughing again, teasing him for being too quiet. He smiles at the memory, not with sorrow, but with warmth. He knows that laughter, once shared, does not truly fade. It simply becomes part of the air we breathe. There were others too. Marcus, who carved wooden figures during long rests. Lucius, who sang old songs in a voice rough as stone. Flavius, who carried a small book of poems tucked into his pack and would read by torchlight when sleep would not come. Each man was a fragment of something larger, the living pulse of the empire's edge. Some fell along the way. Their graves are marked only by the spearheads driven into the earth above them. Yet, even now, the soldier writes, he feels they march beside him still, somewhere beyond sight. He dips his quill again. His words come slower, as though each one must be placed carefully, respectfully. We were men who walked the length of the world, he writes, not to conquer alone, but to witness it. We saw the mountains touch the sky. We saw rivers that sang louder than any song. We learned that distance can be both friend and enemy, a thing that humbles and yet calls us onward. He pauses, letting the ink dry. He looks toward the horizon beyond the camp. Even in the dark, he imagines he can still see that endless road, the one that has no true end, only turns and beginnings that fade into each other. He feels neither pride nor regret, only a quiet understanding. Life, he thinks, is a march of its own, one step leading to another, through joy and pain, through silence and storm. And somewhere along the path, you realize that the journey itself was the meaning all along. He writes one final line before resting his hand. Those who walked beside me are gone, yet I carry them still. Every mile, every breath, the soldier leans back. The night wind stirs the ashes of the fire. His eyes close, and for a brief moment, he feels the ground shift beneath him, as if the earth itself remembers the sound of all those marching feet. And in that sound, there is no war, no empire, no conquest. Only the steady rhythm of men moving forward toward dawn, toward life, toward whatever waits beyond the next horizon. The fire crackles softly, and the soldiers' eyes drift beyond the camp, beyond the plains and the walls, beyond the starlit sky itself, to the place that began it all, Rome, the city that never slept. He can still see it, clear as the night he first marched through its gates. He had been young then, untested, his armor too bright, his heart beating too fast. He remembers the way the sunlight spilled across the marble, how every column seemed to rise higher than the last, and how the air was thick with the hum of thousands of lives intertwined. There was no silence in Rome, he writes, only music and shouts and the murmur of eternity. The streets were a living river, merchants calling out their wares, the scent of roasted bread and olives drifting through the air, the clang of bronze coins, the laughter of children chasing one another past fountains that glimmered like mirrors. Everywhere, color and motion, red tunics, golden light, pale stone, and shadows that danced along the walls. Even the wind carried the sound of life, fluttering the banners that hung from the Senate steps. He remembers standing before the Forum for the first time, staring at statues older than memory, heroes carved in marble, frozen mid-victory, gazing toward a horizon he could not yet imagine. He thought then that Rome was forever, that no storm, no time, no enemy could ever touch its heart. It felt invincible. It felt holy at night. The city changed, but I never slept. The streets glowed with torchlight, and the laughter of taverns spilled into the alleys. The Tiber shimmered under the moon, carrying the reflections of bridges older than kings. Musicians played by the water, their flutes soft and sorrowful, echoing through the stone arches. Somewhere, a poet's voice rose in verse, drowned only by the roll of distant thunder over the hills. The soldier pauses in his writing, the image still alive before him. He can almost hear the rhythm of sandals on the cobblestones, the creak of carts, the whisper of silk as a woman passes by, her eyes glancing just for a heartbeat before disappearing into the crowd. He had walked those streets as one among thousands, proud, uniformed, anonymous. Every man there believed himself part of something greater, something eternal. The empire was not just power. It was breath, light, movement. It was the sound of 1,000 hearts beating together under the same sky. He writes of the Colosseum, the roar of the crowd like the sea, the sand glinting gold beneath the sun. He remembers the feeling of standing there as a young recruit, looking at the gladiators below, thinking them gods in human form. Later, when he fought his own battles, far from home, he would recall that sound, not the cheers or the cries, but the silence that followed when the victor lowered his blade. In that silence, he learned something about glory, that it shines brightest just before it fades. He recalls the temples, too grand and solemn, filled with smoke and prayer. He had stood once before a statue of Mars, offering a coin for safe return. He remembers how small he felt beneath that gaze of stone, the god's hand outstretched as if commanding both mercy and destruction. He wondered then if even gods grew weary of war. He smiles faintly now at the thought. He had been young, too young to understand that even marble cracks, and even cities sleep in time. He writes, Rome was the world, and yet it was only a moment. Its beauty was a dream carved in stone. We believed it would last forever, but eternity is a word men invented to comfort themselves. Still, he does not speak with bitterness, only wonder. For what is Rome, if not proof that dreams can become real, even if only for a while? He remembers a night on Palatine Hill. He and Gaius had climbed it after patrol, carrying a loaf of bread and a small flask of wine. They sat overlooking the city, watching the lamps flicker below, like fallen stars. The sound of the city reached them faintly. Laughter, song, the bark of dogs, the rush of the Tiber. They spoke of the future, of land and peace, of what they would build when the wars were done. For a moment, everything felt still. The world seemed vast and kind. He writes, "I did not know then that peace is not a place one reaches, but a moment one remembers." As he writes, the candle flame bends low. Outside, the night hums with quiet, so different from the roar of that eternal city. The soldier dips his pen again and continues slowly. His words a bridge between past and present. The city was alive, and I was alive within it. Now, as I sit by this dying fire, I understand the city and I were the same, built by many hands, scarred by time, yet still standing against the dark. Rome does not end where its walls crumble. It lives wherever memory endures. He sets the quill down for a moment, feeling the weight of silence return. The camp is still. The stars above are cold and clear. He closes his eyes and sees Rome once more, torches gleaming on marble steps, laughter echoing through the alleys, 1,000 hearts beating beneath the same eternal sky. And in that vision, he feels not loss, but gratitude for having been a small part of something vast enough to be remembered. When he opens his eyes, the candle burns low, and his breath fogs in the cool air. He writes one final line before sleep takes him, even if time forgets our names. The stones remember the sound of our footsteps. The night begins to thin, and the first pale trace of dawn lingers somewhere beyond the hills. The soldier lifts his eyes from the letter and feels the wind shift, a quiet, uneasy wind that moves through the camp like breath over glass. It stirs the corners of the tents. It whispers through the grass. It carries with it the faint scent of smoke, damp earth, and iron. He pauses, his fingers resting on the edge of the parchment. Somewhere nearby, a sword is being sharpened. The sound is slow and steady, metal against stone. It is a sound he has heard all his life, yet tonight it feels softer, almost distant, as if the world itself has grown tired of preparing for battle. He listens. There are low voices in the dark, a few men whispering prayers to old gods, others murmuring names of those they love. A quiet laugh drifts from one tent, gentle and short-lived. Someone hums a tune under their breath, an old marching song. Worn smooth by memory, the soldier feels it all, the hope, the fear, the fragile calm before dawn, and he writes, "The wind is restless tonight," he writes. It moves as if it knows what is coming. The sky is still, yet everything waits. I think the earth holds its breath before battle. He looks toward the horizon. The stars are fading one by one, swallowed by the growing light. He has seen this hour many times before, but it has never felt like this, quiet, weightless, almost sacred. He senses that time itself slows here, between night and day, life and what may come next. He writes again, his words unhurried, The men around me speak softly, as if afraid to disturb the silence. Each of us carries something unseen, a prayer, a memory, a promise. We stand together, yet each of us is alone in this waiting. He stops and listens once more. The camp is alive in the smallest ways, the flap of fabric, the creak of wood, the muffled step of a watchman passing by. The horses shift restlessly, their breath misting in the cold air. He watches one of them dark, strong, eyes wide and aware, and feels a strange kinship. Both of them are creatures of the same fate, bound by orders and the rising sun. He dips the quill again. The ink has thickened slightly in the chill. He warms his hands by the fading fire before writing on. I have fought many battles. I have seen men fall beside me and rise again in memory. I have carried both victory and loss in the same day. Yet tonight I feel neither fear nor pride, only stillness. He sets the pen down for a moment and closes his eyes. The wind lifts a lock of his hair and brushes his face like a hand. He thinks of how often he has felt that same wind on mountains, over deserts, across seas, always moving, never resting. Perhaps the wind remembers more than men do. He opens his eyes and continues writing. We all wait for the trumpet, for the sound that will tear the quiet apart. When it comes, we will move as one, a storm of shields and steel. But until that moment, there is peace. It is fragile, but it is real. I hold on to it like a small flame. He glances toward the other tents. He can see the glow of one candle flickering through thin fabric. Someone else, still awake, perhaps writing their own words, or simply unable to sleep. Another tent is dark. A man inside whispers in his dreams. Somewhere a bird calls faint, uncertain, as if testing whether it is safe to sing. The soldier smiles faintly. It is strange how life persists, even here, at the edge of war. He writes, the wind has changed. It carries the smell of rain now. Perhaps the gods will send it before we march. I think of how the earth will darken, how the dust will turn to clay beneath our boots. Even the rain, if it comes, will not choose sides. It will fall on all of us. He sits quietly after that, letting his pen rest. His eyes move to the horizon, now glowing with a faint band of gold. The light touches the armor beside him, turns it pale and soft. He runs his hand over the metal, smooth, cold, and heavy, and feels the weight of what it means. We are born into times we do not choose, he writes, but we can choose how we meet them. I will walk into the light when it comes, not for glory, but for peace. The wind rises again, stronger now, tugging at the tent ropes, scattering ash from the dying fire. He lets it wash over him, breathing deeply, feeling it fill his lungs with cool air. There is strength in that breath, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that endures. He adds one last line to the page. If this is the last dawn I see, let me meet it with open eyes. He seals the words with a small mark of wax and places the parchment beside him. The sky beyond the hills begins to brighten. The first horn has not yet sounded, but it will soon. For now, the camp stands suspended between sleep and awakening, held by the wind, by memory, by the soft rhythm of hearts waiting together in the half-light. And as the soldier closes his eyes to rest them, the wind moves once more, gentle, eternal, carrying his unspoken thoughts into the coming day. The soldier's hand trembles slightly as he turns the parchment to a fresh page. The fire beside him has burned low, its embers glowing faintly like the last stars before dawn. He takes a slow breath, steadies his thoughts, and begins again, not as a soldier now, but as a man writing to the one who has lived quietly in the spaces between every battle. "There is something I must say before the morning comes," he writes. "Something I should have said long ago." His words flow more gently now, each line slower, softer. He writes not for history, not for record, but for her, the one whose name he does not speak aloud, yet whose presence fills every silence. "Your face has never left me," he writes. "Even when the dust of the marches blinded my eyes, I saw you. When the sound of battle drowned all else, I still heard your voice. You have been the quiet thread through every storm." He pauses, and the night holds its breath with him. He remembers her garden, the way the olive trees leaned toward the sun, the scent of crushed leaves and fresh soil after rain. He remembers sitting there once, his armor still new, his hands unsure, watching her tie her hair with a ribbon of blue. The world had seemed smaller then, safer somehow. The air had carried only the sound of bees, the murmur of water, and the laughter that came so easily from her lips. He smiles faintly at the memory. It feels close, as if he could reach out and touch it. "If I could choose one moment to live again," he writes, "it would be the afternoon I left home, when you stood in the doorway and smiled. Though your eyes betrayed what your heart already knew, I remember the sunlight on your face. I remember the way you said, 'Come back when the fields bloom again.' I have carried that promise with me ever since." He stops to warm his fingers by the dying embers. The parchment feels cool beneath his hand. He watches the wind ripple the edge of the tent, as though even the air listens to what he writes. "There have been many nights when I have seen your face in dreams," he continues, "and for a moment I believed I was home. The sound of the sea, the call of gulls, the scent of bread baking, they all return with your memory. I have learned that the heart does not measure distance in miles, but in silence." The soldier lowers his head, his eyes glinting in the faint light. There is no sadness in his face, only a deep, quiet tenderness. He does not mourn what he cannot have. He simply honors it, word by word. He writes again, slower now, each line an exhale. "You once told me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to walk forward despite it. I have tried to live by those words. When the storms came, when the nights grew long, I remembered them. They were my compass when I could not see the stars." He closes his eyes and sees her once more, standing beneath the same olive tree where he had first kissed her hand. The sunlight breaking through the branches, the air alive with the smell of spring. That moment had felt eternal then, untouched by the world beyond their hills. Now it lives only here, in ink, in thought, in the fragile space between memory and dream. He writes, "If this letter should find you, know that I have loved you quietly, faithfully. Through every mile and every year, I have carried your laughter as a shield, your kindness as a light. You have been my home, even when home was far away." He pauses again, feeling the words linger in the still air. The camp is utterly silent now. Only the wind remains soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath the world. He dips the quill once more, his movements slower than before. The ink glistens darkly on the page. "Do not grieve if I do not return," he writes. "All men must one day set down their swords. I would rather my final thought be of you than of any victory or defeat. Remember me not as I was in armor, but as I was in the garden, laughing, young, and certain the world was kind." A faint smile touches his lips as he seals that line. He knows she may never read these words. Perhaps no one will. Yet writing them brings peace, a stillness that no war can touch. He adds one final passage, his pen moving as if guided by the same gentle wind that moves the tents outside. "If I could send you anything beyond this letter, it would be the sound of this night, the soft wind, the quiet breath of men asleep, the faint hum of dawn waiting to rise. It is peaceful here, more than I can say, and in that peace I feel close to you." He lets the quill fall beside the parchment. The letter now holds more than words. It holds everything he has not said, everything he has kept within the silence of years. He reads the final lines once, lips moving silently. "Wherever you are, look to the sky at dawn. The same light will touch us both." He folds the parchment with care, pressing the edges smooth with his fingers, and places it inside a small leather pouch, the one he has carried since his first campaign. It rests near his heart. It will stay there until the morning comes. Outside, the first bird calls again, stronger now, as the night gives way to silver light. The soldier leans back, exhales, and closes his eyes. The letter is complete, and in that quiet completion, the world feels gentler, like a sigh, like forgiveness, like home. The first light breaks softly over the hills, thin and pale, like a breath drawn after a long silence. The soldier opens his eyes. The camp, once swallowed by darkness, is touched now by gold. Every shape glows faintly, the curve of a shield, the edges of tents, the faces of men waking from restless sleep. For a moment, he does not move. He simply watches the dawn unfold. The sky is vast and gentle, washed with the colors of ash and honey. The air smells of earth and metal and the faint sweetness of dew. Somewhere in the distance, a lark begins to sing, a single voice rising above the murmurs of the waking camp. He sits up slowly and draws the letter closer, the parchment cool beneath his fingers. The wax seal gleams in the growing light. It feels alive now, not an ending, but a small, steady pulse of life. He writes one more line across the bottom, his hand steady, his heart calm. The sun has risen. I am still here. Outside, the sound of movement grows, armor buckling, swords lifted from the ground, men speaking in low, measured tones. He can hear laughter too, soft and quiet, the kind that carries through fatigue. They have done this countless times before, yet this morning feels different. There is no rush, no fear, only understanding. He steps outside his tent. The wind greets him again, cool against his face. He looks around at the camp, 1,000 souls preparing for what may come, each lost in their own thoughts, yet bound together by the same unspoken truth. The horizon burns with gold now, the light stretching long and clear across the plain. He watches it spread, touching everything it meets: the spears, the horses, the distant banners that shimmer like slow-moving fire. And for the first time in a long while, he feels at peace. He thinks of his letter, tucked safely within his pouch. He thinks of her, of the garden, of the olive trees, of the laughter that once filled the air like song. He does not feel sorrow, only gratitude. Gratitude that he has lived long enough to remember such beauty, to have carried love through so many miles of dust and storm. He closes his eyes briefly, letting the warmth of the sun settle over him. I am not afraid, he whispers to himself. Not anymore. When he opens them again, the commander is calling orders, his voice firm but quiet. The men begin to form their lines. Shields lift in unison, a single shimmering wall catching the light of the rising sun. The sound of armor fills the air, not harsh, but rhythmic, almost ceremonial. It feels less like preparation for war and more like a rite, something ancient and inevitable. He takes his place among them. His shield is scarred, his sword dulled from years of marching, yet he holds them with reverence. He glances at the faces beside him, men who have become his brothers through countless days of hunger, laughter, and silence. Each bears the same calm expression, the same quiet strength. The horns sound once, low and distant. The horses shift. The earth trembles slightly underfoot, as though the world itself acknowledges what is to come. He looks to the horizon once more. The light has grown brighter, spilling across the plain until it seems to consume everything in sight. It is blinding, almost holy. He feels it touch his face, and for a moment he forgets the noise, the weapons, the waiting. There is only light, endless, forgiving, eternal, he writes again. The final words flowing from him, as if they have been waiting all along. I have walked through storms, through silence, through years that blurred into one another. I have known fear, and I have known love. If this is to be my last morning, let it be filled with light. Let it be enough. He tucks the parchment away, presses a hand to his chest, and smiles faintly. Not the smile of a conqueror, but of a man who has finally understood. Life was never ours to keep, he writes. It was a gift we were meant to carry, for a while, gently and with gratitude. He looks around him one last time. The field before them glows with gold, the air alive with the heartbeat of 1,000 souls. Even the wind seems softer now, like a sigh moving through time. He takes a slow breath and lets it fill him completely. Every sound becomes distant. The call of the horns, the rustle of banners, the shifting of men in armor. Everything slows, everything stills. He whispers one final thought, though no one hears it but the wind. Thank you. Then he lowers his visor, raises his shield, and steps forward into the light. The letter remains behind, resting on the wooden table inside his tent. The candle beside it flickers once, then fades, leaving only the soft glow of morning to fill the space. Outside, the sun rises higher, spilling warmth over the camp, over the earth, over the centuries that will come. And though the soldier's footsteps fade, his words remain gentle, human, eternal. Carried forward by the same wind that once whispered through the tents of Rome, the words begin to fade. The ink, once strong and steady, trails off into uncertain strokes. Each line slows, as if time itself begins to breathe between the sentences. The letter that began with such quiet resolve now trembles near its end. It feels as though the soldier's hand grows tired, his thoughts softer, his heart somewhere far away. He had been writing in the morning of what the rising sun might bring. He had written, When the sun rises again, I will, and then, nothing. The quill stops. The ink bleeds outward, smudging the parchment like a final sigh. I look down at the unfinished line. It feels alive somehow, not broken, but paused, as if the words are waiting for something or someone to complete them. Yet, deep down, I know they never will be. There is no violence here, no sign of struggle, no chaos frozen in the ink. Only stillness, as though he had simply stopped mid-thought and let the world take over from there. The unfinished letter rests before me like a breath caught between centuries. I read his last words again, softly, carefully. Each syllable carries the weight of what came before, the years of marching, the memories, the love he carried with him until this final night. The line ends mid-air, as if he was still speaking when the light faded from his world. I do not try to imagine what comes next. Some stories are not meant to be finished by another hand. Some silences are meant to remain whole. As I trace the edge of the parchment, I can feel the faint imprint where his hand once pressed down. It is a small mark, invisible to most eyes, but it holds the last trace of his living moment. I can almost sense the hesitation before he stopped writing, that small, fragile instant between thought and stillness. The silence that follows feels sacred. It is not empty. It is full, full of everything that words cannot say. The kind of silence that breathes, that listens, that holds the truth gently without needing to explain it. I sat there for a long time, just looking. It feels wrong to speak, wrong to move. There is a strange peace in this incompleteness, a reminder that life rarely ends in neat sentences or perfect conclusions. Most stories fade mid-thought, leaving us to imagine the rest. Perhaps he meant to finish the line at dawn. Perhaps he never meant to finish it at all. Maybe he knew, somehow, that some truths are too large for paper, that silence would say what his heart already understood. The letter lies open before me, fragile but timeless. It does not need to be finished. It is complete in its honesty, in its stillness, in its humanity. His voice remains in the pauses, in the smudge of ink, in the trembling of a final word that never came. I think about how many stories end this way, not with answers, but with quiet, not with a closing, but with a lingering feeling that stays long after the words are gone. It is not an ending that demands understanding. It simply exists, tender and true. I fold the parchment slowly, careful not to disturb the final line. The edges meet as they might have on that night, sealed not by wax or thread, but by time itself. For a moment, I simply held it, not as a relic, but as a memory, the last breath of someone who once looked at the same stars, who once hoped for morning. And as I set it down, I realized something gentle. This unfinished letter is not a sign of loss. It is a sign of life continuing, a life that stretches beyond the page, beyond the soldier's last word, beyond the centuries that followed. His story does not end where the ink does. It continues in the act of remembering, in the act of listening. It continues here, now, through me and through you. That is the quiet beauty of an unfinished letter. It invites us to pause, to breathe, to listen not for what was written, but for what still lingers in the silence. The soldier's hand stopped, but the message did not. It moved beyond him, carried by time, by memory, by the soft persistence of human connection. The letter remains open, eternal in its incompletion, a bridge between the living and the remembered. And as I sit in that stillness, I understand what he left behind was never meant to be finished. It was meant to be felt, and in feeling it, we become part of it. The letter is unfinished, but somehow it is whole. I find myself returning to the letter often, not for its history, nor for its rarity, but for the silence it leaves behind. There is something profoundly human in that unfinished line, something that refuses to fade, even after centuries. When I first held the parchment, I thought I had found a fragment of the past, but now I understand. It was not a fragment at all. It was a mirror, a reflection of what it means to be alive, to hope, to remember, to love, and to let go. Each time I read his words, I hear more than the voice of a Roman soldier. I hear the voice of every person who has ever stood at the edge of something unknown and tried to find the courage to speak. His letter is not only about war or duty. It is about the quiet, unspoken truth that connects all of us, that life, in the end, is a series of moments we try to hold on to, and that love is what makes them worth remembering. I imagine the soldier sitting with his pen, the night pressing close around him. He did not write for history. He did not write for fame. He wrote because there was someone, somewhere, whose memory made him feel less alone. And isn't that what we all do in one way or another? We reach out across time, across silence, across the vast unknown, hoping that someone will hear us. Perhaps that is why his unfinished words move me so deeply, because they remind me that even when life is cut short or words go unsaid, the feeling behind them endures. Love, once written, once felt, it does not vanish. It lingers, like the faint scent of smoke after the fire is gone. Sometimes I think of what he might have written next, but then I stopped, because maybe the beauty of his message lies in its incompleteness, in the way it invites us to finish the sentence ourselves. Each of us carries a version of that line, and when the sun rises again, I will. We fill it with our own hopes, our own promises, our own quiet dreams. If you are listening to my voice now, somewhere in the stillness of your night, perhaps you too have words left unwritten, letters you never sent, feelings you never voiced, dreams that live quietly in the spaces between your thoughts. It is all right. You don't have to finish them. You don't have to know how the story ends. Sometimes the act of remembering, of feeling, is enough, the soldier wrote, so that someone might remember him, not his name, but his heart. And here you are, across thousands of years, doing exactly that. In listening, in feeling his words, you have given him what he sought, not immortality, but remembrance. And that, perhaps, is the gentlest form of eternity. When I close my eyes and think of him, I see no battlefield, no armor, no smoke. I see a man who loved deeply and lived honestly, who found peace not in victory, but in understanding that his life was part of something larger, something continuous. He is gone, yes, but his breath, his ink, his memory, they ripple outward, still moving, still touching us here and now. We often imagine history as distant, as something that happened to others. But the truth is, we are all part of the same unfolding story. We carry echoes of every life that came before us in our choices, in our kindness, in the way we reach for one another through the quiet. The soldier's words are not from another world. They are from this one, the same air, the same sky, the same longing that lives in you and me. So, if you can, take a slow breath. Let it remind you that you, too, are a part of time's great river, that every heartbeat, every memory, every whisper you leave behind adds to the story. And perhaps, one day, someone will find your words, your gestures, your love, and feel what you once felt. I think that is what the letter teaches us most, that even when history forgets our names, it remembers our tenderness. That courage is not always a roar, but sometimes the quiet act of writing a final line and trusting the dawn to finish it for us. The soldier did not live forever, but his humanity did. And that is what gives me peace, because it means that nothing good is ever truly lost. It only changes form, becoming light, becoming memory, becoming the soft voice that carries across the centuries to reach you now. So tonight, as you rest, let those words linger gently in your thoughts. Think not of endings, but of continuations, of the ways love endures, in letters unfinished and in hearts still beating. The soldier's story is not about death, nor war, nor loss. It is about life and the quiet beauty of being remembered, even by those who never knew your name. If you wish, you can whisper a thought back into the silence, a word of gratitude, a name, a hope. Somewhere beyond the measure of time, I like to think he might hear it, the echo of a voice, carried by the same wind that once moved through his camp long ago. And as you drift toward sleep, may that thought stay with you, that you are part of the same unbroken thread that has stretched from his hand to yours, that every word ever written in love still lives within the quiet of this moment. The letter was never finished, but perhaps that is because it was meant to continue here with you. And now, as night deepens and the world grows still, the story becomes yours to carry forward, gently, silently, endlessly. There comes a moment when words no longer reach forward, when everything that could be said has already found its place in silence. I sit with the letter before me, the ink faded, the parchment worn soft by time. The story that began in a soldier's trembling hand now rests quietly in mine, and I feel it breathing, even now, through the centuries that have passed. It is strange, the way memory lingers, how it bends through generations, slipping between the cracks of time. What was once a single man's final thought now feels infinite, scattered across the quiet spaces of the world. Perhaps that is what eternity really is, not endlessness, but the way certain moments never fully leave us. I close my eyes, and I can almost see him, not as a ghost, not as a hero, but simply as he was, a man standing at the edge of dawn, feeling the weight of his armor, the warmth of light breaking over the horizon. He is calm. There is no fear now, only peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop reaching and begin to rest. His story, unfinished on the page, finds its ending here, in this quiet understanding. It is not about battles or victories anymore. It is about being remembered, not in stone or in legend, but in the small act of reading his words, of holding them close for a moment. I think of how every life, no matter how distant, leaves a trace, not loud or grand, but soft, a whisper that moves gently through time. You can feel it in the silence between breaths, in the stillness before sleep, in the fragile ache of remembering someone you never knew. The soldier's voice has faded, but something of him remains, something kind, steady, unbroken. It is not his words that endure, but the feeling behind them, that quiet wish to be understood, to be felt, to be seen. And somehow, across centuries, that wish has been answered. I open the letter once more. The ink has turned to shadow, the parchment thin as breath, but the air around it feels alive, as though the space it occupies still hums with presence. Time has not erased him. It has folded him into its rhythm. He is part of the same current that carries all of us forward, gently. Inevitably, I think about how many others there have been, countless hands that have written, loved, fought, dreamed, and vanished, each leaving behind a fragment, a whisper, a trace. Together, they make the quiet hum of human memory, the soft chorus of everything that has ever been felt. In that thought, I find a strange comfort. To be forgotten by the world is not the same as being lost. Somewhere, always, there is someone who will stumble upon a trace, who will pause for a moment and remember. That small act is enough. I set the letter down, and the silence feels complete now. Not heavy, not hollow, but full, like the final exhale of a long story finally at rest. It no longer needs to be told. It simply is. The soldier's journey, the letter, the waiting centuries, all have led to this stillness, this quiet of forever. It is not an ending, not really. It is the soft turning of the world as one life merges with time itself. I take a slow breath and imagine the soldier standing once more beneath the vast Roman sky, the fields before him, endless and golden. The wind moved gently through the grass. He is not gone. He is part of everything now, the dust, the dawn, the silence that lingers after the final word. His peace becomes mine, and perhaps, in some distant way, it becomes yours too. Because stories like his never truly end. They rest, they fade, but they do not disappear. They move quietly through the heart, finding new listeners, new dreamers, new keepers of memory. And as long as someone remembers, even for a moment, the whisper continues. I closed the letter for the last time. The parchment folds softly, like the closing of eyelids after a long day. There are no more words to add, no thoughts left to chase, only a stillness that feels infinite, wide, calm, and full of light. If you listen closely, in that quiet, you can almost hear it. Not a sound, not a voice, but a feeling. A gentle reminder that every life touches something beyond itself. That even in the end, there is a connection. Even in silence, there is meaning. The story settles like twilight, soft and unhurried. The light fades, but it does not vanish. It simply changes shape, becoming part of the stars. And in those stars, somewhere, a whisper remains. I breathe once more, and the words drift into stillness. The soldier rests. The letter sleeps, and the quiet